It's been almost a year since Apple started their transition to their very own processors, and one of the first computers in that transition was the M1 Mac Mini. I've spent literally hundreds of hours using this, and in that time, I wanted to give an update on how it's going, what I like and what I don't like, and why I think this is still the best value computer that you will find, period. So why to all that stuff I just said? Let's find out. We can't slam it because I need to use it to make this video. And if we break it, we can't use it. What's up, everyone? I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. This M1 Mac Mini is easily the best computer that I've ever purchased. And I don't mean by a little bit. If we were to do this as some kind of bar chart or tier list of all the computers I've ever purchased, the Mac Mini would be the only S tier, and everything else would be what, like B tier at best. That's not hyperbole. That's not sponsored video hype. This is my computer I personally purchased, and everything that we're going to talk about today, it's all real. So let's get right to it. What makes this Mac Mini so darn good? Well, the first thing right off the bat is this is the only current Apple-based processor computer with any kind of I/O built into it. The MacBooks all have Thunderbolt. The iMac has Thunderbolt. It has USB-C, and depending on the model, it might have a gigabit Ethernet port. But the Mac Mini looks at all of those and shouts, amateurs, because this baby has USB-C, USB-A, HDMI. These are also Thunderbolt, Ethernet. There is now versions rocking 10 gigabit Ethernet. This has really everything that you could need to set one of these up as your home computer. As much as I like Thunderbolt, and yes, we've all heard me extol the virtues of Thunderbolt in just about every video that I've ever released, I don't always like having to need a dock for my home setup. I don't always like having to bring a dock with me wherever I go. Sometimes, as we've seen with previous models, those docks can go bad over time, and the more parts you add into a system, the more points of failure you introduce at the same time. That's not an Apple thing, that's not a computer thing, that's a system, like a system function level thing. The more parts you add, the more parts can fail. Here, there's really only one additional thing that I would need, and that's an SD card reader. And while I do have a RAID enclosure / dock combination right now, all I really need is just a cheapo USB-C to SD card reader, and that completes the package for me. Like, I've spent, what, like 15 extra bucks to get my personal thing. Who all needs SD cards out there? Not a lot of people, so I would imagine that this would be perfect for just about everybody. The Mac Mini is still the only M1 Mac that can support 2 monitors at once via the Thunderbolt and the HDMI connection. I guess technically the iMac can also do that via Thunderbolt because it already has a display, so you will have 2 displays. But if you want 2 totally personalized monitors and you don't want to use some kind of dodgy accessory workaround, the Mac Mini is still the only way to do that. The next thing you cannot to this day touch the Mac Mini on is the price. Everything else is awesome, or I wouldn't use this. But the fact that you can get everything that we're going to talk about today and that we've talked about for the last few months for less than any other competitor, it's wild. I talk about the base model a lot in my videos because that's the most impressive to me, that you can get an 8-core processor desktop monster for around $549 refurbished. There isn't another computer out there that competes. I wish there were. I wish there was more competition in this space because it gets hard to make videos about computers and then not needing to jump through serious or specific hoops for those recommendations when something like this exists. Because this has destroyed the mid-range and low-end market space. But even when you start going up into the specs, there are refurbished options available that still make this a wild value. Just today, in making the script, I did a quick search. I found 2 options with that 16 gigabytes of unified memory style body for $759 and $999. While I don't personally think that everybody needs to buy the top of the line memory option out there, there are workflows that will need the most memory you can get, and those 2 models are still less than the cost of a MacBook Pro or even a budget Windows computer. Like, I'm trying to think of words other than wild or like shocked face Gary or like other stuff like that, because it's crazy. And the cool thing is, whatever level of storage or memory or whatever else you get, you'll still get the same processor and the same GPU across the board. The next thing I've been consistently happy with is the power. Yes, we have seen that there are other processors out there that are more powerful than the M1. There are processors, it's not that hard to find a processor that can score higher on the numbers charts than the M1. The new Ryzen chips are fantastic, and even the 11th gen Intel chips, despite how much we beat up on Intel as a company, those chips are still pretty good. And because we can give them more power, they are stronger and faster than the M1 chip. Not just for processors though, because additionally, as of today, the M1s do not have a dedicated graphics card, and they only rely on their integrated GPU. They, on paper, will fall behind on the graphical front too. But if you aren't a gamer, or you want some kind of 3D modeler, you will not really see the difference. And if you are a creator, this is phenomenal. Look, I don't say this as somebody that saw this on a spec sheet once. Maybe I ran Cinebench a couple of times. You know, I did the standard benchmarking procedures, and then I was like, yeah, that's what this computer can do. I say this as someone that spends 8 hours a day working on this as my computer. I use this as my primary computer running this YouTube channel. The power here is unrivaled. I have access to I've got a closet over here full of computers. Every computer you've ever seen on this channel in the last year, I'm looking at right there. And this is the one that I use because of the power. Now that most major creation software has transitioned to working natively on the ARM-based system that these M1 computers run on, there isn't really anything that they can't do for creators. I personally use Final Cut Pro for my video editing, and I use Photoshop and Lightroom for my photography. It's been lightning fast in the Mac Mini. I personally have the 16 gigabyte model with 1 terabyte of storage, and this never slows down. I've been making lots of videos about this. I am infatuated with this. I spent 3 years using a leased iMac Pro, and it did have a higher core count, and it had a higher powered processor, and it had a big old dedicated graphics card, and it ran much slower than this computer. I use all raw files in my photography, and Photoshop never beach balls on me, and when I'm video editing in Final Cut, I've never once seen a stutter. If you watch my videos where I do unboxing or other videos where I'm doing things and I've got all those 3 angles, I'll have those 3 rows of high efficiency files up and they play back perfectly. I do not know of a computer released before the M1s that could have said the same thing that didn't cost like 10 grand. In rendering, this computer is also lightning fast, and my brain we just talked about the iMac Pro. I can't get over the fact that I spent less money on this computer, and it saves me serious time over that iMac Pro. I spent $1,200 on this Mac Mini, and that iMac Pro today, refurbished, costs $3,800. Think about that. That should be a 1 sentence for the video. I just start the video, I say, hey, this costs this amount, it costs this much, and then I slam the mic down and walk off. Probably make this one of those YouTube shorts I've heard so much about. Something else I think I've mentioned in every video about the Mac Mini, but comes to mind after I've been using Windows computers so much. I do want to mention this again. This is not only one of the most powerful computers I've ever used, but even 9 months later, it's still one of the most quiet computers I've ever used or ever even heard of. I've never heard this thing. Never once. It's got all of that power in this teeny tiny little body. And it does have a fan. Look, right there. That's a fan. But to prove that this fan actually works and does something, so every now and then I have to reach behind the computer to feel if there is air moving. Because again, I've never heard the fan. This has changed everything for me and how I set up my own personal workspace. Computer noises now, they drive me literally up the wall. Not only that, every video now, I now have to talk about computer fan noises because of this thing. This has changed so much about my opinion on technology. My RAID enclosure now is the loudest thing on my desk, and I notice it so much more because my computer is so quiet. This could, though, hey, this could be a bad thing. If you are still okay with computer noise, maybe stick with what you've got, because once you transition to the Mac Mini, it's so good. Everything else will sound like a hairdryer. But I guess in all fairness, I don't really use hairdryers all that much. I don't have that much hair, so I don't really ever use a hairdryer. Are they louder than I think they are? Either way, the Mac Mini will ruin you for how quiet it is. I mean, functionally, there is nothing I dislike. This is my favorite computer ever made, and personally, not only is it my favorite computer ever made, this perfectly fits inside of my workflow. If there were one thing that if I was king for a day, or I had some kind of magic power, I could wave a wand and change something today, I would really like to see more memory options added. either storage or active memory. I'm sure it's a limitation of the current M1 chipset itself that we only get options of up to 16 gigabytes, but as a desktop computer, especially in 2020 and 2021, I really wish we could get at least 32 gigabytes. There are folks out there, we mentioned it earlier in the video, there are folks out there that could hugely benefit from the M1 processor, but because their programs take up more than 16 gigabyte, they have to move out. Like, they can't pick this even if they wanted to. Personally, I think people overbuy on memory when they don't always need to spend the money, but that doesn't stop workflows that do need it, and it's unfortunate the way that your hands are tied here. And as the inside of this computer is mostly empty, I do wish there was a way to upgrade some of the internals ourselves if we could. Add some more storage if you wanted to get maybe your own internal SSD RAID setup like you can very easily get on a Windows desktop, and you can even get that on a Windows laptop. With this kind of space, we should be able to do that. So if I could change something, it would be the memory options. But at the end of the day, so what, right? How is the Mac Mini really holding up after the last 9 months? Look, I could stretch the length of this video out a whole lot by adding in a bunch more hilarious anecdotes and talking about benchmarks and specs and blah, 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 but I don't want to do that today. I don't want to do that today. I don't want to waste your time. The Mac Mini is legitimately one of the best computers ever made. It's the best priced, best powered, best fit, best functionally, best entry point into the Apple ecosystem. This, without a doubt, is the best desktop computer I've ever seen. I have my own custom built PC. I built a custom PC for my son. I use laptops all the time. I use all sorts of computers, and this is the best one that I've ever owned. I think there are also good laptops out there, but when it comes to a computer that you set on your desk and never move, this is my favorite one ever made. Even if you did want to travel and have a desktop computer with you instead of always traveling with a laptop, this would also be very capable of that. I mean, look, it has all of these ports in the back. That means that you can hook this up to just about any modern or mostly modern display and any keyboard or mouse that you could find. I just really enjoy having this, and I have nothing but good things to say, and I will continue to recommend this to everybody that I can find because this is the best. And if you like this video and you do want to see more about this, you're curious, you want to go out and get one yourself, here's my whole playlist about the M1 Mac Mini and all the cool things you can do with it, and you can find it by clicking right here. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.